All right, guys, let's do a recap here. Hope everyone had a great week. It was a short one this week. Obviously, with Monday being Labor Day, so we started Tuesday. That's where we're going to start this entire thing at. We're going to start from September 5th. So rewind your clocks real quick, crack a beer. It's going to take a little bit, but yeah, September 5th, first trade was 260 calls on Tesla at 7 o'clock. You guys remember on this day, right? Let's see. This was this day, Tuesday, or no, yeah, Tuesday, September 5th. Really, what we were looking at was price to mark down into this little area here, right? This was an imbalance candle from Tuesday, August 29th. We never really tagged into that level, so we were waiting for a pullback into it and some kind of buyer confirmation. You guys can see here on Friday, right, we did have some buyer confirmation. Obviously, it sold down into it. It was a really aggressive sell-off, if you guys remember that. But all it really did was retest the top of this imbalance here, tied into the gap, right, or this weekly confluence now. And we got confirmation that buyers were there, right? I mean, I could have front-loaded it or front-ran it with swings, but I would prefer to see buyers step in. So we got that wick there. We opened right at the previous, kind of close here and just rallied up from there. I wanted to wait a little bit on this day. If we go back to, let's actually rewind really quickly. So I actually wanted to wait till at least a little bit of time had passed by before taking this trade. Remember, once again, that's why was so hard, because I could have just took calls right here at like the close, but I wanted to just wait a little bit. So if we mark it back a little bit, I took these at 7 o'clock, right, which is right around here, I believe already. Old V. This had rallied right off the open. So unless I just pulled calls, there's not much to do. But if you guys remember, this previous month low was a huge, huge spot at 252.42. If we go to the monthly chart really quickly, right, this is kind of how it looked. I think I had it a little bit off. Yeah, it was right here actually. So it's actually 254.12. But if we, this was that monthly low here. It's kind of in the mean threshold right here in the middle point of all the monthly candles, as well as obviously the weekly. But if we go back to the 5, right, so this is actually how it looked here. We were just shy underneath it. I was thinking it could maybe pull back down. We can get a higher low to trade into it. Let's take a look real quick. Right, this was the opportunity. You end up getting a push down, right? If you guys don't know, on these days it's really helpful. If you feel like you missed out, just pull a fib, right? And I think this was actually the reason I cut early. If you guys weren't there in live trading, was that the fact that this pulled down and it didn't really come down to the 618, which is where I'm more comfortable, right? If you guys don't know, the 0.5 is when premiums start to discount. 618 is that sweet spot to kind of get in, right? Where you'll find a lot of algos or whatever the case may be, like to trade to. It's just a slightly deeper retracement. But yeah, this didn't pull down to the 618 like I had hoped. So when I took the trade, I was a little bit hesitant, thinking that it might come down a little bit more. But really, right, when you get into this trade, you're just trying to trade it back to the high, right, and maybe get a higher high. I was expecting the trade to end right around 254, but as you guys saw, right, we'll just play it in. Got right to the 0.5, wicked at it. That's when I actually took the trade. I got in at 172, and I trimmed into the high, right? So I ended up coming into like a 1.9 trim. Made it very aware that I was going to add if this came to the 618. And I ended up closing full at 1.9. Wanted to focus on Apple. Also, I just didn't like, I wasn't comfortable still not getting that 618 touch. So that was my fault. I kind of talked about it. I was like, damn, I really wish I would have just held that. Even if it was small side, there's no real reason to not take that trade up to target and a breakout potential, especially if you didn't even get the 618, you might as well just wait till it comes to the 618, then add into that position. So I don't know why I did this, but yeah, closed Tesla full at 2.0, so not a huge win. But I can play it out because, really, this is what you want to hold these things for, right? So the entry was that black line. I might as well remove it. It's on this bar. Perfect 0.5 retracement. This is when I scaled, right? And I was pretty much out of this position going to this high here. And really, you guys can see it ends up pushing up, consolidates right underneath that monthly level, pulls back down. Really, you'd want to see it not break under this spot now here, right? Because this is a confluence with these lows, this high, right? You can consider this potential, I would say either a breaker block, or you can consider the second order block. I would just like to not see this get broken under here, right? As you can see, it kind of comes down, hovers, right? And you're not really getting a sell-off from bears. Volume's relatively low. right? You're getting higher lows established as well, even though, right, this is here. This is a pretty high up, higher low. Still, right, I mean, it's still creating those higher lows and really pressing up against sellers who aren't really able to get a move down, right? You guys can see they're getting their backs pushed against the wall, which is that 254 level, right? Consolidates even tighter. Another higher low should come into play right here, even though it's micro, right? It's not a huge one, but you guys will end up seeing. This was a long hold. I remember I think it was Jay Leon in our Discord ended up mentioning like, hey, like, should I get in right here? I was like, well, you want to get in if you can get another pullback or a higher low, which I think was right around here. You got to think, right? Your risk is getting really, really tight, right? Because if you think about it, this push here, right? This was a big higher low move. This was a nice one. But then you come here and then look how much difference this higher low is right here, right? Oh, didn't mean to do that. I think there's way too many lines, but we'll actually do it this way, look, right? So this higher low to this higher high was $4, right? This higher low to this higher high. It's not even a higher high. This is basically a rejection at the high. $2, right? This higher low, right, to this one is only $1. You guys can see, right, how you're kind of, as a bull, you're losing, you're getting good entry still because there's still pullbacks or higher lows, but if you're not getting that higher high breakout, you're basically you're taking on more risk for less reward. So I would have preferred to have seen a bigger pullback, but of course, right, Tesla does its thing a lot of the times. You end up getting that big rip, right, which is that breakout. You guys can see the volume here, the harmonic breakout. So you probably would have been looking for something like this, pullback, go, right? I don't think it did that. That's the reason Tesla's so hard to trade for a lot of people and why people usually lose a lot on Tesla, because it doesn't really do those. See, it'll kind of consolidate near the high of the bar and just go, right? And a lot of people feel panicky and then they'll jump in and then it finally retraces at the worst possible moment. Like there, you know, people probably would have contemplated an entry. I still would have waited. But yeah, Tesla ended up having a really nice breakout. I think it even traded to 260 if I'm not wrong, and it did it all in one day, right? So like you guys can see. Oh no, it didn't do it all in one day, but it was still a really nice move. But yeah, that was pretty much how I could have held that trade a little bit longer. I wasn't too upset with that. Like I said, had a really good trade on Apple, which I think I ended up swinging if you guys don't remember. So, oh no, Apple, I think I go back really quickly. It took January 6th. Just gonna do this all in one take. Tuesday. Oh yeah, Apple. Apple was an easy one. Apple was the same thing, guys, over and over and over and over, if you guys remember. Apple, I took it here. Sorry for the yellowness of the chart. This is how I know if it's in a fair value gap. Really, though, right, I think I had an edge on this trade because we opened above this level here, 187.38. If you guys remember, right, 187.38, significance of that was the gap here, right? So 187.38, this ends up opening on Tuesday right here. Yep, kind of opened slightly above, but still, you guys can see, right? You had kind of this gravestone doji, had like a spinning top almost here at the top of the gap, which looks bearish, right? But once you opened up and you still, I mean, look at the volume here, right? These 2 days are super high volume. Sure, it was pretty close to the gap fill, but you still hadn't filled the gap. It wasn't a huge volume day in terms of like a potential reversal, and still, right? You even didn't get like you opened up right near the low of this day, which is that spinning top candle, and it sold down, and it didn't even do anything, right? It pushed down to the gap that we were looking for. So this was a really, really easy trade in my opinion. This is why I kind of just shifted focus to Apple. I felt like it was lighter risk. I actually took, I think it was 2 week out contracts. This was a swing trade, so it was somewhere in the Discord, but yeah, remember just kind of risk this level here. Like, hey, they're going to have to break under this level here. We ended up getting a nice confirmation move over this right here, right, which was the previous day low. So I'll fix that line quickly. Right, we ended up kind of consolidating under it, but we didn't break the low here, or this gap. Ended up finally breaking out, and as always, right, when you get these nice breakouts, look for the pullback on and then a higher high. We ended up getting that, right, and then we also got a subsequent higher low. So I mean, this was an easy trend to kind of ride throughout the entire day. I think everybody did good on this one. Definitely should have added size right here, just looking back on it. Right, the breakout, pullback, easy pullback onto the previous day low. But yeah, this was a second trade on that. What else did I take? I think AMD was another one that I ended up taking. Let's go ahead and take a look at that one. That might have been a swing. Okay, guys, so this is the actual AMD Apple trade. I found them. They were in the swing section. So if we go to this really quickly, you guys will see I was also in Zoom. We'll review that if you guys, yeah, I mean, you guys can't comment, so we'll review that one. But going to add some exposure. That was pretty much the Apple trade there, right? If you guys can see, I mean, I went, I don't even know the percent here. I think I went like 20% on, yeah, the weeklies, which were kind of, oh no, they weren't weeklies. They were September 26th. Did really good on those. Obviously, I had the Apple 195s as well that I was up 170% on. Zoom ended up being pretty disgusting. If you guys remember that, I had like a squeeze. We'll look at that here in a second. But then I added AMD here at 843. Right, let's go ahead and take a look at that. So this was the day it had that crazy news candle, right? So 843 kind of pushed up, pushed up, pushed up, pushed up. Right, came here, here, got in right here. Right? Yeah, I got here. It's actually a little bit after I got in here. But yeah, let's review that really quickly why I took that trade. If you guys remember, this was from the weekly scan. Honestly, I don't care about the wedge formation. What I cared about is the fact that it was claiming this, right? So if you guys remember, if we go to the weekly, okay, this was a huge, huge spot in terms of this being the imbalance kind of area that we were looking for, right? Obviously, this is the imbalance candle here. You have kind of like your fair value gap here. I don't really know even where this fills. I guess it filled right here, right? Yeah, it had to have been right here initially. But this whole range really was built a lot of sell side liquidity, right? So you had you know, potential, or I'm sorry, buy side liquidity, which was now sell side, right? You're at 108.10, I believe. Just a lot of wicks down here. So wick, obviously a little bit higher here, but wick. You can see it was respected a ton. And then of course you had this lower range. This was a little bit tougher to figure out where it could bounce, but I like this little area here. But we're just focused on the daily, but you guys know now where I got the 108 level. I talked about it on the weekly scan. Now, if we take a look, right, the 5th, we started to get that like nice uptrend off the lower region here of this kind of wedge formation. This is still making lower lows, but once again, price is getting compressed in like this consolidated range. So, I mean, you're really looking for it to potentially push to these lower highs here. These are the weekly lower highs. And if you guys remember, SOXL looked really, really good. Intel was starting to see some movement. Obviously, NVIDIA was performing pretty well. So AMD, you would look at it from almost like a laggard perspective, but also the fact that it's so compressed and there's really been no dramatic drop. I know this doesn't look the best, but I mean, this day here, once again, that was that not FOMC, that was the Jackson Hole day, right, where everything kind of sold off, but it filled that imbalance relatively quickly. So yeah, we were just looking for some kind of claim over 108, a pullback onto that, and I was willing to risk that and trade it up to these highs here, these lower highs on the weekly. And that's exactly what it did. I mean, it was it was relatively simple, right? Just being patient, right? Just being patient, waiting for your setup. This trade almost looked like it should have been a take on this right here. But remember, these aren't retests, guys. Just because a candle comes and touches something off the open, that's not a retest. So I never actually took this trade off the open. So it actually gave it up, right? Kind of gave up. It did retest it for a short, but then it broke down. Really nice V-shaped recovery here. This is exactly what we saw with NVIDIA today. By the way, this is Friday that I'm recording this, so this happened today on NVIDIA. This is why I took this trade. But it broke out, right? Ended up pushing up into this little spot here. And if you guys remember, I took it right around, what time? 8:45, 8:40. We'll call it in that range. So it broke above. Finally, you got your high volume breakout, right? I don't chase these candles. It's important not to chase these, right? And you got to think about this being an imbalanced candle in itself. Just look for the retrace onto the level it broke or into one of these wicks here. You guys can see, right? Very, very easy. Breakout. I talk about this all the time. Pull back. Take your shot once it confirms, right? That's easy. You don't need to take it as soon as it touches the level without the candle closing. I let this candle close. I let this candle close, right? There's no sign of sellers. Volume's still really low. The pullback was low. You know, and the compression of this bar itself is a really tight bar. God, what was the low on that? 108.16. That was a 20-cent candle, guys. The sellers that have, you know, if they would have had control of this, they would have moved it down way more than that. And then, you know, you get the big pop here, which you start to move out on. This is when I started to add into the position. It came down just a little bit. And I think I was red actually on this just for a few seconds, but it's okay, right? You got to be okay. My risk was a break under 108.10. I know my higher low had kind of been put in here. We had obviously a change of character. And then you get that crazy, crazy, crazy news candle. Right? And this was a massive news candle breakout, pulled back higher low, and then it started to make its way up. I did have this drawn out. If you guys know, my blue is my bullish fair value gap. So you created a fair value gap from here, right, to here. So I was waiting for this to potentially get pulled back into later on a later date. It did come down, kind of hover in this range. I just never really liked it, so that's why I never really traded AMD again. It's probably a good decision. I think that was like a one-time thing. But yeah, that was that trade, guys. If you remember, we go back to it really quickly. Took that at 79 cents. I think it ended up pushing up to a total of, and I marked this live too, that fair value gap once it ended up happening. I don't remember what it went to. Yeah, I went to something crazy. Yeah, I closed this at 175. So, yeah, really nice trade. I took it all the way to target there at yeah, the lower highs on the weekly, which was exactly what I was talking about. But then I ultimately ended up losing on a Google trade here. You guys will see. I don't really know. Remember I sized into the close. We can try to nail this too. Or should we do, yeah, let's do Zoom actually. Zoom. This was a swing trade. It was pretty easy, guys. I'm not going to lie. This was probably one of the easier ones. I think I started the swing here Friday. Yeah, so remember, guys, when you have these big breakout days, there's one of two things that's going to happen. You're going to have a breakout and a pullback and retest of the level, right? Or you're going to have a rest day. And a rest day will typically obviously be an inside bar, but it's going to rest at the top portion of that candle more than likely. So, I mean, this was a picture perfect rest day on Friday. Right, I was willing to add into it if it pulled down and retested this breakout, which was obviously here, right? This big breakout here. But look at how tight this range is, the low volume. It consolidated near the highs here, quote unquote, your rest day. So you'd be looking for it to break out above that. Another day, I don't know if we got lucky with news, but really this was the day I entered the swing. There's not much more to talk about with it. Fill, I don't even remember what I got for a fill. I don't even remember, guys. Oh yeah, 67 to 74. So bid was 67, ask was 74. I got filled in that range somewhere. But yeah, these, I mean, these ended up going insane. I think I closed 114, but I definitely left a ton on the table here. It just wasn't my priority, honestly, if that makes sense. I was looking for it to push up to this spot here, just a weekly high here. I mean, it rejected, broke through a little bit, but if we go to the chart from Friday, which was here, I mean, you guys can see just how tight this rest day was, right? Right at the upper range here. Never really even broke this higher low on the hourly either. Opened right just slightly under, was still in the confines here. This is why I think this rallied so hard, is this hourly never broke, right? I mean, candle close was right on that. From both sides, right? The bearish candle of the open, and then also the secondary candle, and really just rallied from there. I mean, that was a pretty easy hold. Just, gosh, guys, this was an absurd. Like, if we just take it from the open of that bar, that was a 7% move on that day. I think I cut, because I had added up here, right? So you got to think I added here. I think I cut somewhere in this candle here. Had to have been the strength candle, but it obviously rallied even further. But really easy win. It was about 30-40% if I remember off the top of my head. I left, I think it went to 60 or 70. A couple people held to that. So that was Zoom, right? Google. I'm trying to knock these out as quick as I can. I think they're still pretty fresh in my brain. I still have this marked here. God. This was an annoying one. If you guys remember, pretty easy thing here. We can go look at it from the daily. I think I took these Tuesday. Wait, no, did I take these Tuesday or Friday? Yeah, I added these on Tuesday, right? Yeah, I did. Okay, so I added these Tuesday, 9:15, 140 calls. I mean, I still don't think this was a bad ad. This is what was so difficult about this. We go to the daily really quickly. I mean, really, yeah, I was looking for it to kind of, we had this sell-off here. I mean, once again, not a crazy, crazy daily candle. I mean, you can obviously tell from the bar itself, but the volume wasn't anything special. It was holding above this weekly, or this is all a weekly spot, by the way. So this entire range here, right? And you were just looking for a breakout and a retest, which is essentially what this weekly low was the entire time. I think I might have just been early to it. I held, obviously, I took that trade through news. That's why it was such a big loss. And I added, I think at the close, if I'm not wrong, but and obviously data affected that. I remember I mentioned it. I was like, okay, this is a big spot here, but I mean now you guys can see it in retrospect. I mean we're definitely kind of flagging out here, something like that where it's starting to get the breakout. It's unfortunate, it is, but it happens. But I took this trade here, right, September 5th. I was thinking, right, that we would probably, if we closed above this, the close here, right, this closed right here versus this close here. I thought if we closed above that level, specifically right here, right, it's this kind of shooting star gravestone. Once we got to close just at this daily low, I thought we'd be good. Honestly, I thought we'd get a nice little move back up to the highs and really start to trade towards the gap. There's some bullish flow coming through it for it as well. I'm not going to use that to justify the trade, but I thought we could get a nice move above, right? Considering that this wasn't a high volume candle, we were really holding above this weekly spot too. I thought it was worth a shot. So I ended up pulling that trade. When did I get in? I think I had to have gotten in while it was consolidating here. You guys can see the chop here, right? And then you started to get the breakout. Higher low, held, held. Right, so this was a really well respected area with pretty equal bottoms. My voice just cracked. Ignore that. But pretty equal lows. Now, when did I take this trade? 11:45. So I took it right before the close. Oh yeah, it's a shit entry. What did I think man, I don't know why I took that. Well, I did start it, so I think that's why I honestly did that. But yeah, that's a shit entry. I don't know what I was doing. I almost cussed, but I mean, if anything, right? I mean, I probably wasn't looking at it at this point, but if anything, just kind of critiquing my own trade, like, oh, why the hell didn't I take it here? It's all good. It's all good. But yeah, I definitely should have taken it here when it was consolidating. Obviously, you had the breakout. I mean, this is one of those things. I mean, I did buy what perceived higher low, right? So it's not the worst thing, but I definitely bought like inflated premiums. Oh, this is what it was, right? So this is a pretty nasty imbalance here. It's not a 3 bar imbalance or a fair value gap, so it's not technically valid. But yeah, this was that massive sell-off. Okay, so that's what I was doing. I was trying to trade this back up through. And I wasn't necessarily hoping for a gap up, but that's what that sell-off was. Okay, so this is Friday. It's always kind of fun to go back and try to see what I thought was going to happen. Okay, so I was seeing this as the imbalance here. And I guarantee, yeah, okay, just by looking at the daily, that was the head and shoulders, wasn't it? Yeah, so a lot of people were probably looking at this, right? I can just see that with just looking at the daily chart. Yeah, so people were looking at I mean, it did play out, to be honest. So it's, probably something I shouldn't have taken. I think I did mention that too if we go back to the Discord. But yeah, definitely like a head and shoulders quote unquote pattern. But I was looking for it to retrace through this kind of candle here. I didn't feel like that had been retested, and I felt like there was definitely some orders left behind that it could retrace back to kind of take those and then sell back down. Or make its way to the gap, right? But yeah, I mean that played out pretty nicely. Albeit it did help out because of the news. But news isn't. It's not justified by news, right? The chart tells you first. But yeah, that's essentially that trade. We can go back really quickly to this because I added at 11:45, so like right around here, it pushed up. I was green, sold off the open, right? I think it ended up pushing down here. Did I take ads? I probably should have. No real break under our level, just consolidating. Hammer on the daily, following an imbalance candle on the daily. So I'm hoping this will move back. Yeah, so I did hold it. No, yeah, I just got milked on Google. Yeah, so they did come back to break even. I think I mentioned in the chat that at one point, I mean, this was the news, right? So it kind of opened here, pulled down, pushed back up. I was slightly green considering my entry was like right at this higher low here. So I was slightly green. I probably should have closed these for sure. There was no reason to hold these. But yeah, I mean that news, quote unquote news, tying into the chart for that head and shoulders, it did work out. So it did sell off. Probably should have closed right here immediately as soon as it started to reject. But I didn't. So that really sold off really nicely. Pushed all the way down into that level, which is actually the spot where I should have been looking to add that retest, right? On the weekly, you finally got it. And you guys can see since then, right, we've been just kind of made a new low, pushed out higher low into that spot, and just slowly trucked our way up. And then if we take a look at the daily, voila, starting to get the breakout. So just little things you can look at from me and just pick up on, and everybody does it, right? Everybody does it. It's not something to be ashamed about. Everybody can refine their entries. It's just about reviewing them and trying to understand why you did what, and you're going to be put in that same situation again. I promise you. Charts do the same thing for the most part. It's all psychology. You know, algos are trading these things, so you're gonna see the same thing over and over again. And if you can't, understand why you're doing things and understanding what you're seeing in the moment, you're gonna keep making those mistakes, right? And I talk about it a lot. You always think that you're not gonna get a pullback or you're gonna miss out on something, right? And I might have felt that here, right? And look what ended up happening. I mean, eventually it pulled down into the weekly retest. Sure, it wicked under just a tad, but I mean, that's where you got that change of character, where you started to get your higher lows. I don't really think there was a clean break of structure that I saw on the hourly or the 15, but it did kind of just start to make its way back up. But it tagged this level, right, which I thought it wouldn't get to again. Sure enough, it does. It starts to make its way out for that breakout. And look at that. I mean, it's right where I closed, right? And I would have had a much better entry if we just take a look at this, right? This is where I closed, or essentially where I should have closed. It's right back there. Now, the question is, does it fill this? Probably, honestly. That's what I would think. But just a bad entry, and it happens, right? Just accept those. I think I took like a 25, 30% loss on that. A little bit more than I would have liked. Um, but yeah, just being honest, it happens, right? I think on here too, I didn't mention it. I just closed it. I don't know if I should have showed my P&L. I think I lost like 440 bucks on it or something like that. It was pretty bad. But yeah, ended up rebounding from that really nicely. But yeah, let's go ahead and check out, I think now Wednesday. All right, guys, so this is going to be from Wednesday. So this is my recovery on the week, if you will. First trade I took was SPX 41 or 4510. That's wrong, but I think it should have been 4105. But yeah, this is what I ended up taking at 105. I just grabbed two. This was right into that news, right? So I think it was jobs numbers or whatever it was, but this is right when I had Google as well. And this is where I actually had the loss. So I was up 20%. Kept everyone in, as a reminder, right, that we had data in 7 minutes. We were looking for 451 before closing anything. Obviously, it took a big loss on. It wasn't big, right? I mean, it's 73% on two contracts, at 105. So it is gonna obviously, look like a big loss. But two contracts, 155 bucks worth of stab, in my opinion. But on the day, I was down 414. I lost about like 300 and something on the Google trade. So I wiped out about a fourth of the AMD profits, the Tesla, the Zoom, etc. So I always say like not to tap into your profits. That's what I mean. Like I always make sure I don't size in super heavy for certain trades, especially if it's speculative and it's going into data or whatever the case may be. I'm front loading something. I'm usually very careful in that sense. But yeah, definitely lost on that trade there. And then you guys will take a look right as we make our way down. I was looking for like our fair value gap. If we can either get above pre-market low in the 5-minute fair value gap at 447, or I was looking for a short off that, right? So there's two different areas that I was looking for. But really, once I'm red like that, I'm going to be very, very patient. Everything has to align for me to pull a trade. It has to be off of a level, right? It has to be something that I want. The market has to come to me. I'm not going to just go chase price action. Whereas I think a lot of new traders will just chase price and try to get that back. They'll just quickly look for a wedge. They'll look for a flag. They'll look for a breakout, right? And they'll just kind of get rid of everything that's in their brain and that they've learned to try to get a quick buck, right? And it's hard. I get it. But you got to really, that's what makes good traders. And it's hard to do sometimes because it just takes one moment and you can, retrace basically a lot of what you've learned. But yeah, guys, I mean, really, I just waited for almost, 2 hours. I just sat here. Um, And eventually, right, I mentioned that a lot of our levels haven't been retested, so I believe a trade to 447 is eventual, but I would like time on contracts, maybe a week or so. So I was just waiting for some kind of bottom to happen, a subsequent higher low, maybe a secondary higher low. I'd get ready to pull that there. But then I noticed here that SPY was getting really stuck at 446, right? So I took a 446 put. I was risking a break above 446. Reviewing this trade, I'm already disappointed, right? So look at the trade here. So we had kind of like a breaker block, if you will, where this ended up kind of high, low, pushed up, literally rejected the highs perfectly. This was a news trade uh, for this candle here, but really I could have just gone short here. You know, there was nothing that stopped me from taking this trade. But yeah, definitely rejected here. This looked like a good short. As you know, news was here, pushed down, created this imbalance. So I automatically had noted the fair value gap here, right? So from here to here, that you got that 3-bar pattern, right? So it definitely has a fair value gap still. I think SPY is trying to push to this little spot here, and it'll progressively make its way up over the next week or two, in my opinion. But this would be a good short opportunity if it does come up here again. But right, it never really pushed into the fair value gap. You guys can obviously see that it got pretty close, right? It maybe should have pulled the trade again, but it didn't even retest the lows, guys, of the day. So these are always so hard to try to short when you don't get retests on bearish days, especially if it comes after news. It just gets really volatile. So a lot of the times I just like to wait, for a lower high if we can get one, that structure that I always talk about, where I just wait for, a low, a higher low, and then I look for longs at that point. The market's just not going to continue to bleed. It's very rare that it does that, right? But yeah, this ended up pushing down off of this level. Pretty unfortunate we missed this. Kept going, right? Kind of pushed up a little bit still, right? I wouldn't consider this a retest. I mean, it did kind of push back up to the lows, but these are sketchy, guys, especially, considering that there's not much distance between this low. It's just, I don't like these trades. So I didn't look at here, right? I let it kind of push down, push down, push down, push down, and then it pushed up, and you guys can see a lot of wicks here, right? Even more than this one. This was what, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 bars. We got a pretty consistent spot here of this low, right? Where we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 candles in a row that were essentially all stuck, right? We just pull it from the body here, the low here. We can even just pull it here. This whole spot, guys, was just a massive area that we were looking for as a rejection point, right? 446 wasn't getting broken. So, I mean, if we even just take our level here, right, we could just put to like right there, make it red really quickly. So we'll just make it black, actually. We'll pull this down. Right, that's a clear spot. It's a lot better than this one, right, where you only had 4 bars, maybe technically only 3 that really retested this low. It's a much stiffer spot in terms of it like having an actual ask that you can almost see on the chart, right, where sellers are really holding this. It helps too. If you guys don't know, sometimes I'll use this. God, it's stuck on my screen in a weird way. Well, that's not good, guys. I can't get this off my screen. Oh no. No. There we go. I got it. But yeah, I'll use this from time to time. If you guys don't know, that was embarrassing. They literally got stuck on my screen. I couldn't get the X button off. But I'll use like the GEX to figure out what levels are seeing like fluctuations of volume into certain strikes, right, and how much gamma those are pulling. And market makers will trade these to these levels as long as you're getting good derivative flow, right? So options flow to those levels. They'll typically trade to them. And I remember seeing that 446 had a really big positive pin, right? So sellers were actually looking to de-risk here and sell the underlying at this point. So this was a good spot. I felt like I had a really good confluence here. So I ended up going short on that trade as I showed at 74 cents. I felt this is so bad, guys, because this is one of those things. And I remember I try to tell you guys what not to do at times because everybody does it and you got to be aware of it. What do you guys think I'm going to do if I get into a really, really quality trade that I feel is pretty quality, right? At least for the most part. And I get in with a good position size, right? Let's say $1,000, $1,500, which is a pretty normal size for me. And I'm already down 400 bucks, right? And I start to see green. What am I going to do, right? What is the average person going to do? They're probably going to try to close and get back to green on the day. You know what I mean? And they're not going to see the trade out. Or they go green on the trade by 20%, comes down 10%, they're going to panic and sell. that's kind of what I did here. So I ended up getting into this. I was very specific, risking a break above 446. I targeting the low a day, right, and potentially an outlier flush to the weekly 443.90. This is why this trade bothered me so much, right? I got in at 74. I trimmed at 90. I put stops at break even, which I didn't need to do, right? I mean, it either invalidates me or it doesn't. But I put stops at break even. It closed me at break even, and I was green on the day by $45. Yippee, right? Like, come on. But look what ended up happening to that trade had I held a little bit longer, guys. Right? Kind of came down. Did it ever break 446? And look, I even gave myself a buffer. Like, it's 445.97. It did not, dude. Like, what was I doing? And the goal was to trade it from to here, right? A lower low break. So, I mean, we should have this on here. Whatever, let's do LL. Right, here's our lower low. It never broke the level, right? Why didn't I just let this trade up? I think a couple of these, maybe this wick here pushed back up, and this is what stopped me out. Maybe it was this wick here. Oh, yeah, just looking back on this is frustrating, but it's a human emotion thing, right? Once you're red, you want to protect your nest essentially. You want to get back green on the day and have a fresh start. If that's the case, don't put the trade on. You know what I mean? Maybe size down, whatever the case may be. But yeah, this was a frustrating one because I went like 25%. As you guys saw, though, look at how big the meltdown was. Perfect entry, slightly got wicked. Maybe not perfect, right? Because it did wick me out at break even, but still, never broke the risk. Traded all the way, broke the lower low, or broke the low, made a lower low, traded all the way down, as I said, right? What was I targeting? 443.90. You guys can't see. Where was it? I lost it. Yeah, here, 443.90. Weekly flush to 440. That would have been almost like a 300, 400% win. On $1,000, and like just as your capital or as your risk, that would have been absurd because I for sure would have held from the lower low. Probably would have held like 20% of my contracts to that level, easy. But yeah, just a learning experience. Yeah, it happens to everybody. Like I say, you're not going to be perfect when you trade, but if you're going to put on a trade, see it out. I always talk about that. If you're going to put on it something that you feel is like A plus quality setup, you've been waiting for it. It has you have an edge on it, or whatever it may be, right? You just feel like it's a good trade for you. If you're going to get into that trade, see the trade out. Either stops you out or invalidates you at your level, or you take profits at target, or obviously you can take profits along the way, but this was a circumstance like, why did I stop out of this? Why did I put stops to break even once just let the trade see me out. Even if it came up and touched, let's say it broke 446, I probably still would have been green on the trade. Probably still would have been red on the day because of my Google trade and the SPX in the beginning of the day. But at least I would have been green on the trade still, right? I took 25% profits. I guarantee if this pushed up and broke 446, I would have been red like what 5%. It's like nothing crazy. So that trade, really disappointed with how I managed the break-even stop loss. Don't know why I did that, but in the back of my head, I do know why I did that. It's because everyone wants to protect their profits. You go down from 400, you go to plus 45, right? It's human nature, and that's why trading's so difficult, right? So learning experience, chalk it up. It's not that big of a deal. Let's go and look at the next one. Right, so trade number 2, right after that. I'm not happy with this one, but I did it for a reason, right? So if you guys saw or take a look here, I ended up taking SPX 1.9, and I said very risky since I'm shorting the low here. Now, I had valid reason for doing this, but you guys can tell me, right? I had an entry up here. I traded a perfect entry for a break-even stop, right? Now I'm trading the low a day. This is how retail typically trades, and I hate saying that I hate trading that way. It doesn't make any sense. It's pretty amateur. Luckily I had an edge on this one, so I would say it wasn't necessarily the most amateur thing, and I'll explain it, right. So when you get these lows like this, these definitive lows, and it starts to move up, I always talk about bid and ask, right. You can see these on level 2, and right, what will end up happening is sellers or buyers, I'm sorry, will end up putting, I'm trying to find the brush tool, they'll end up putting bids right here, right, where they're trying to keep price up. And there's limit orders, right? So they'll put like 200 orders, 300 orders, 400 orders. It has to match with a seller, or yeah, a seller, right? So people that are selling, they'll be buying these contracts and they'll try to push price up, And then you have market orders, right, which are more aggressive. These are buyers that are going above the bid, going to the ask to try to buy and push price out. That's essentially what will happen, right? But what I ended up seeing on level 2 is that these guys that were trying to hold this level at 445.11, let's say they had 200 orders or whatever at 445.11, what they ended up doing is taking these orders, instead of having them at 445.11, they drop them, right? They'll basically erase these, and they'll take those 200 orders and they'll move it down to, let's say, 445.50, or what I saw was 444, right? So now they're taking those 200 orders now and placing them down here. So that's called a bid pull, right? So now it just kind of means like, hey, we don't think price is going to hold here. Instead of buying contracts here and trying to support price here, we're going to go down to a level that we actually want to buy, right? So I started seeing a bunch of bids get pulled here, right? And then these guys, these sellers, right, were pressing down the ask, right? So what they're doing as price is moving down, they're essentially building different levels to sell at, right? Kind of my drawing here, right? They're just kind of incrementally pushing price down. Typically what you'll do is you'll get both sides that meet, and whoever has the most orders will get the breakout, right? But as you saw, right, as I mentioned, the bids were getting pulled. So this is a one-way street where you're getting these guys pressing down, pressing down. Bids should hold here. They don't, because they're pushing down to try to take this level for buyers, right? And then you get that huge breakdown. So I saw the bids starting to get pulled, right? And I saw obviously the ask starting to make its way down. You're getting that compression once again, and it works both ways. We've done this plenty of times on the bullish side of things. Excuse me. But yeah, jumped into those at 1.9. Just made everyone know, hey, I'm shorting the low here, right? I never short the lows. It's very risky to short the lows. I just saw something, right? And I'm still not really proud of this trade. I wish I would have just held the 446. It would have been way less stressful. But yeah, jumped into that. I was looking for 8.0 if we ended up getting that breakdown, just because obviously I thought it would trade to the 443.90. I did the mental math on that, but yeah, I only had one contract, guys. Especially considering I'm shorting the lows, I'm really thankful I did this. A lot of people, knowing that they missed out on the 446 short, which is a perfect entry, would probably load the boat at the lows, right? Thinking they missed something. I was smart enough, and I'm thankful that I only took one and I tried to milk it as best as I could, right? That's what you probably should do if you miss situations like that. You feel maybe emotional or whatever the case may be. Just understand where you're at on the chart and really size correctly or proportionally for that level. And I mentioned, right, we would see some floodgates open, and we ended up just getting a disgusting breakdown. This was the breakdown that we should have had, right? I don't know why I did that. This is the breakdown that we probably should have just had stress-free had we not closed the 446s, but SPX made up that ground pretty easy, right? I just ended up mentioning people can cut if they want. We took this from 1.9 to 4. I ended up closing at 5.50. Of course, though, this ended up pushing all the way down to the 8.0 mark. So yeah, just ended up mentioning that, hey, this could get bad, right? This was the fair value gap that we were looking for it to hold, right? And if it broke this 443.90, it was going to trade to that bottom part, right? 442.46, which it ended up doing eventually. But yeah, just ended up mentioning to everybody, hey, I went from negative $400 or whatever to plus 43 on a trade that I let slip away from me, and then going from that to $914, right? Just on one contract, and then obviously the plus whatever, yeah, $40 I had. So really, really nice day. Could have been managed a lot better, but I didn't go tilt, which is always a good thing. And then on top of that, I really performed my execution well in terms of just holding from level to level once it broke this low and not taking profits, right? Letting it ride to my target and then kind of cutting at or near my target. So yeah, that was not the best day, but also not the worst. I thought, definitely could have done things a little bit better, but this is what these are for, guys. You got to back test your stuff. You got to figure out how you can improve, and I'm telling you guys, you will see it again. So let's go ahead and jump into the next day, which is going to be Thursday. All right, so this should be a little bit more fresh in everybody's mind. This is today, Friday, and really, NVIDIA was the one that made the day. I had a couple other trades, but this was pretty easy. I'm not gonna lie. I think just a lot of people are super bearish on NVIDIA for things that don't make sense. We had this big gap down day, of course. I think we're gonna trade up into this fair value gap once again. But yeah, this was the down day. Ended up catching these lows here at 452.68. And then we obviously wanted to trade the following day on a Friday. I felt like we'd have a good move. Now, if we go to the 5 minute, this is where everything kind of stemmed from, right? So I wanted to mention this really quickly. You guys have been studying, right? We had an order block here on the 5 minute from yesterday's kind of last minute rally, and then tied into that. So let's go ahead and take a look at this, right? Because I think this is where a lot of people had questions about why I ended up taking the pre-market low, right? Look at how well this kind of lined up. It wasn't perfect, right? I maybe could have brought it down a little bit lower, but you see the body of this? This is the close, the open, the close, the open, close, right? This is that bullish candle, right, where we had this big breakout from that level, and then this is obviously today, but you guys can see, right, like this is a big spot that if it breaks above and it retests this level, this area should act as support, right? And usually when you get wicks like this, it's difficult, right? But you can either risk the bodies or you can take the candle highs. It's really up to you as a trader. Me personally, I like to just like do a little box here. But then I noticed really quickly, if we go back to extended hours just to make it a little bit easier to read, right? I saw the bullish order block right here. This is an OB off this level. So I really kind of just mapped out once again, kind of like the point where I thought it would kind of catch, which is right here, right? And then I had it tied into the hourly kind of pivot, or the candle opens and closes on the hourly. Really what it created for me was this little pocket here to take calls, right? I don't think I showed anybody my little pocket. Like I said, there was people in the Discord that were kind of copying. I got rid of them today, but I just had a weird feeling. So I've been kind of keeping some of my charts not hidden, but just a little bit under the table, if you will. So this was my area that I was looking to take calls in. Ideally, right, pre-market lows where I would have added, but I was looking for it to trade back to the previous day high, right? And then from there, okay, you guys saw my purple line. Purple line was the gap fill. Okay, that was kind of my ultimate target for the entire trade. Now, we got into the trade, okay, literally a pre-market low. I took the trade right off the open. I was that confident in this position. I even tweeted on Twitter. I was kind of giving signs on there because I was that confident. Literally 6:30 a.m. I took 465 calls at 1.28. I was instantly green, guys. I was instantly green. If it broke pre-market low, I probably would have closed and then reevaluated, maybe gotten in again if it had broken back above and held there. But I got in. 1.28. I was instantly up 1.8. I was up 60%, 80%. Just an insane move. I only had 2 contracts too, just because once again, if I have a feeling something's going to happen, those are the moments I'm most afraid of, because I feel like I'll size in too much or I'll be overzealous. I'll be, I'm not willing to accept a loss if it ends up happening. So I only took 2 contracts here. If I had more, oh my gosh, I would have made a ton. But yeah, 2 contract trade there just because it was a trade right off the open, touched my level instantly. And yeah, that's really pretty much it. We ended up getting a target-to-target move from pre-market low all the way up to our target. I cut everything full at that point. I don't know what the exact percent was or anything like that. I don't think it really matters. But later in the day, you guys will see at 8:29, 2 hours later, I took NVIDIA one more time, right? Kind of the same reason if you guys remember AMD, okay? Why did I take this trade? Okay. Well, ends up kind of tanking throughout the entire day, ends up breaking the low. We don't really retest anything. Once again, there's no retests that have been happening all week from a bearish side, so I don't know why that is. But, right, what did we touch? 452.68. What was 452.68? Pretty simple, right? It's just literally the previous day low. Maybe a little bit shy of it. Obviously, this came down a little bit more than the previous day, but it's in the same exact vicinity, 452.68. This is a huge weekly spot. Look at all the wicks here, guys. Buyers aren't just going to give this up very easy. Now, obviously, I didn't just take it on the touch of that level. You want to start to see its trend, right? Kind of get a break of structure, if you will. We kind of got it right around here. But yeah, I mean, I ended up tagging these once again at 829. Okay, took these at 829. Right, 92 fill. Might be looking to add on a higher low just because you got to be aware of those situations. But 829, I got in like right here. Right, we started to break over this level here. So we'll just say I got in on this bar, somewhere on this bar. Really, once again, I was looking for it to push up into the previous day low, or not the previous day low, the current day low, which is right here, right? We'll go ahead and draw like a little arrow. Always got to be aware of these. But if you end up pushing up into this level, this is why I said I'll add on a higher low. Let's say my entry's here, look for the push here, drop, higher low, and then try to take things out. That's what I was looking to add on. I ended up taking the trade, of course. I don't know percentage-wise what I ended up getting. I think I ended up getting, I took the trims at 1.2. And had runners only. I had 100 contracts, so I had a lot of money on that trade. But then I think they went to like 135 or something like that. I pulled stops to break even just because I was once again protecting profits at this point. And then I got stopped on remainder at entry, but I let everyone know, hey, watching for a higher low, let it establish first, same strike 460s, won't size as heavy this time. And then what I ended up doing, right, just kind of was like, okay, this is going to happen, right? So I ended up saying I was going to start a swing on NVIDIA just to get some time on the trade. And I really believe that it's going to trade back to that 480 fair value gap. But yeah, this is where I switch channels really quickly. Was this it? Yeah, these, by the way, I lost on these one, guys. I don't know if there's even, they probably still going to work out. I mean, it haven't really ended. I just closed everything because of that sell-off. But this is where I ended up starting this position, right? NVIDIA, I took the 480 calls at same spot, 849. So 849. I got in somewhere down here, right? Somewhere in these like lower regions of this candle. I thought this was the higher low pullback. You guys can see it pushed up, hit our level one more time, kind of a micro higher low, and then it pushed up into target, right, which was 460. And then obviously sold down from there. But I mean, that was really that trade. I think IP and a couple other people held the initial position, right, on this entry here and held it all the way up to here. I think those went to like 1.9 or 2.0. It was almost a 200% gain. So props to them. That was a sick trade. I just had a lot of contracts for that one, so I cut a little bit early. But yeah, I mean, really, basis for that, honestly, is just a daily level, right? It's an oversold kind of name, right? I think it's an oversaturated short name as well. But really, right, just kind of the push up, the break of structure here, trying to catch some kind of break of structure pullback, or maybe even just this previous day level. This is where I added the swing. And a lot of people get stuck on these, right? I mean, a lot of people get stuck trying to short this because they see it makes sense if you're like kind of just reading textbooks and stuff like that. I mean, you probably think this is like a flag, right? You'd probably be looking at this as a flag or some kind of rising wedge, whatever it may be. And they short it prematurely without any confirmation, and that really adds fuel to the fire. But really, right? I mean, if you look at this is probably what it was. Yeah, kind of like a 618 rejection. So I definitely could have shorted this as well, but my day was done at that point. So I ended up taking a whatever 45% win on the 0 DTEs for that. And then what I ended up doing for NVIDIA, right, was about 20% or so. I don't know if I got a screenshot of it. But yeah, they ended up going like 19-20% on next week's contracts, which were still really nice. I think I made about like $90 a contract, $100 a contract. So really nice. And then I ended up stopping the last one break even. But that is pretty much it, guys. That's pretty much it. I don't think there's anything else to review. I closed the SPY 451 swing as well. Obviously the contracts, I don't know. I think I might have just added it the wrong spots. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Those swings, though, have just been a little bit difficult in terms of trying to not necessarily time bottoms. I've just been trying to add at what I think are key spots, and then every single time, like Tesla wasn't one of them. I shouldn't say every single time, but SPY for sure had that news day, right? That news day that really dropped and kind of killed those contracts. It's just about being patient and just waiting for your daily levels to start those swings. And I've been trying to start them intraday. So that's kind of what happened with Tesla today. That's what happened with Google that on Tuesday. And then what was the other one? Man, I can't remember the other one. I'm kind of drawing a blank. SPY. What am I saying? The ones that have worked out really well, if you guys remember, AMD, Zoom, Roku, etc. Those have worked off of me like waiting for daily levels and starting the swings off the dailies rather than me trying to swing stuff off of intraday kind of price action. So just going to be a small, minute change moving forward, just so you guys are aware of that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed. I try to do these on the daily recaps. You guys remember I was sick last week. This week was a shorter week. So I just thought I can confine everything into a big weekly recap. So hope you guys enjoy. Make sure to review your trades if you guys took anything on your own during this week. It's a really crucial part of your growth. I'm telling you guys, it'll help you out a lot. So everyone have a great weekend. We will see you on Monday.